so good at putting up this act.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's amazing to me.
It is amazing.
You know,
it's
like they sit home at night and they practice it.
Welcome to the Not For Nothing podcast, the place where ideas unfold and conversations take flight. Topics such as relationships, everyday life struggles, and more with your hosts, Christopher Michael and Robert Evan.
So now that we're on the topic of, relationships and parenting and everything else, I'm going to show you this video, okay?
Okay.
You tell me what you think. So let's mute this.
Because a man sleeps with another woman does not mean he doesn't still respect you. That doesn't mean that he doesn't love you. No, she means nothing to him. And if you think I'm going to give up my life for a man that loves me and respects me and take care of me, he didn't claim her. He put that ring on my finger. Okay. So why am I going to leave over someone that doesn't mean anything? He's a man. He's just going to be a man. That's it. My soon-to-be husband, he treats me well. He respects me. I don't have to ask for anything. But at the same time, I also do what I'm supposed to do with a woman. I cook, I clean, I suck, I fuck, I shut the fuck up. So I know how to keep my man. Just because.
This is why self-respect is so freaking important.
It really is. She's I don't know. She's delusional a little bit.
Give me thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Give me a reaction.
First of all, 100% guarantee that her fiance is filthy rich. Let's just start there.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because no woman would put up with that behavior if they weren't getting, whatever
Something.
the hell they wanted otherwise. And I would never just go for money alone, but if I had to put up, which I wouldn't, but if I had to put up with that behavior, it better come at a pretty penny, because that's disgusting.
Right, but let me ask you a question, though. How do you feel about the fact that she's kind of perpetuating that behavior to other women?
I feel like that is a very clear indication that she has been 100% gaslit, manipulated, and brainwashed.
Right.
She's speaking for a man.
She is.
Not herself.
Those are not her real thoughts. She has been led to believe that because it's the only thing that makes her feel okay with the relationship like that.
Right.
It's feeling like, oh, I agree with this.
Absolutely.
Would you be? Go ahead.
Aside from that, I think she really has very low self-respect, and that I've said before, she's confusing a man's tolerance for a man's respect.
Exactly. She's clearly never been loved.
Right. But
Loved.
My biggest issue with it is that message gets sent to other women.
I mean, let's be clear here. Respect doesn't equal love.
No, it does not.
You can be respected by anyone, period. That doesn't mean they love you. Providing for someone doesn't mean that you're being loved by them. A man can be an amazing provider and still be a piece of shit.
Absolutely.
But I mean, if she's okay with that, she's okay with that. But I feel bad for her because she could actually have something so much better.
I feel sorry for her. That's what I genuinely feel sorry for her, that she feels or has come to a place in her life where she thinks that behavior is okay.
I mean, this is the mentality of women in the freaking 1600s.
Right. It really is.
Her husband, her fiance is not a king. Okay?
Yeah.
He is not a king. He might think he is. He might say he is. He might make you treat him like he is, but he's not.
Right.
He's not. It's nuts.
It's
It's frustrating, though, because first, if that's the life that you want, by all means, go ahead, go for it. What bothers me is she's talking about this every woman should do that, right? Well, I don't get it. If he's fucking somebody else, but he's engaged to you, no. If you guys are polyamorous, fine. If you guys are swingers, fine.
Right,
if you're doing this based on a financial agreement, fine.
Right.
All fine things. But don't speak like it's the norm and it's what other people should be doing. Celebrating it like that's what a woman should be. So the idea or the notion that this is the norm, it's not. And if that's what you want, if that's the agreement that you guys have, totally cool.
Right, exactly.
Really, there's no issue with that.
If it's an open relationship, okay, it's an open relationship.
But don't speak to it like it's the norm and it's how other people should be living. Or the fact that she said two things in there. One, she said, give up my life. She didn't say give up my love. And the other thing she said was, I don't have to ask for anything. Well, like you said, that implies, and I could be wrong, but implies, I'd love to ask her, what does your fiance make?
Yeah.
Because if it's $36,000, you're probably not saying what you're saying.
Right, exactly. And I mean, sadly, that is a lot of the culture right now. If you have money, Everything else is whatever.
But it's ridiculous because it's like, well, what do you want, a relationship or do you want a business transaction?
Well, I'm going to
what
speak
is
on
it?
behalf of women here because I can tell you why this has happened. Okay. When you date men that are like in the same, financial bracket as you and they treat you like shit, when you date men that have less money than you and they treat you like shit, eventually you get to a point where you go, well, I'm only going to date rich men because then at least I'll be crying in a mansion.
Right.
At least I'm crying on vacation in the Bahamas, as opposed to crying over some broke ass guy that treated me like garbage, and like you were to your point earlier, like men, there's chivalry isn't there anymore. And I think that's why a lot of women go for rich men.
I was going to ask though. So, okay, it's a good point saying like, okay, well, I could be broke and unhappy, or I could be rich and unhappy.
Right.
But like the notion being like, well, why don't we address why you're unhappy?
Right.
Instead of just, again, you putting lipstick on a pig, right? Like,
Right.
It's like, yes, I'd rather be rich and unhappy than poor and unhappy. But at the same, like that's, I think a lot of people would.
Right.
But I'd rather not be unhappy. I'd rather be poor and happy.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
why are we not having that? Like, why is that
Right.
not a mindset? It's this validation. We've talked about it numerous times. This instant gratification.
Yeah, exactly.
Living for the photo.
Yeah.
Living for the gram.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem is that like people are so accessible these days and they don't respect relationships anymore. Like
They don't at all.
people, and I was actually funny enough, I was talking to the Uber driver on the way here. We were talking about that, like just how, and in my perspective as a woman, men want what's easy and what's available. They don't want to put in the time and the effort that is required to have a good woman because that's too much work. It's a lot of work, and it requires you to take a look at yourself and grow as a human being
Right.
because you have to step it up. You have to look at yourself. You have to be able to say, you know what, I suck in this area. And a lot of men have too much ego to take a look at themselves in the mirror. Like they can't accept that they have shortcomings. They just want something that's easy. They want a woman that's going to come in and just build them up all the time and never call them on their shit and not make them stand on their word for anything. And of course they do.
Right.
Why wouldn't they want that? They can have that these days.
Yeah,
Because
they
a
can.
lot of women have very low self-esteem and no self-respect at all.
Low standards.
And no standards because they want love so badly. They want to be loved so badly they'll literally tolerate anything
Yep.
just to feel loved. It's not love, but if it feels like love, that's okay.
Right.
And I've been that woman before, so I get it. Like I've been that woman before,
No, it's got to be a horrible feeling. And yeah, I don't know. I feel sorry for her. But yeah, the crazy. I mean, she's got to be, and I would imagine the man that she's dating is probably a narcissistic personality.
Right.
Like
100%.
for
He is
sure. 100%.
100% manipulated her into believing that.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I can't imagine she had a good father figure. There's no way.
No, because there's no father could ever raise
No.
their daughter to have that
No.
much.
To think that that's
I'm
okay.
saying, like, there's no way.
Absolutely 100% not. No father would allow that for their child. Like,
And
period.
if I saw my daughter on a show talking like that, we'd have a long talk.
Well, and her, there's no way she had a good father figure because that is what you expect. Like the way that you see your father treat your mother and you growing up, that's what you expect,
Right. Yeah, it is. It's like I said, it's a sad digression. But yeah, you know what the crazy thing? I used to love, like I still do. I love getting to know someone.
Right.
Like I love putting the work in.
Right.
And like the challenge of getting to know someone and being able to show them who I am.
Yeah.
Like that's the best part
It is
about it.
the best part.
It really is because you know how exciting it is, right?
Right.
When you're really getting to know, you're really diving deep. It's like the most exciting part of the beginning of a relationship,
It's exciting if you want a relationship.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Being authentic and genuine about it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you're the type of person that's like, I just want to like sleep around, like I
Right.
just want to sleep with people, you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, like.
Right.
And there are a lot of guys like that. They're really just trying to get what they can get. So the idea of like getting to know someone, spending hours on the phone call, like none of that's going to work for them because that's not the goal.
It's not their objective.
And then they don't. And then when they see that they don't have to do the work for it, they're not going to. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it really is. It's a crazy culture we live in today.
it sure is. It sure is.
And it's unfortunate that even one woman feels this way or has been manipulated to feel this way and that that's all she deserves.
It's like cultish. Like,
It is cultish, though, right?
I hate how the guys are celebrating it though.
oh, of course they are.
Like,
But
Of course they are.
It serves them.
yeah,
Yes, it couldn't get better.
Self-serving. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, if you had no morals, what would you want? You want a woman that will literally worship the ground you walk on and let you do whatever you want.
With
because you
whoever
have
you
no
want.
respect for anyone. You don't care about anyone else.
Right.
Yeah, she's your plaything.
It's your arm candy. Like, of course she's the perfect woman for an egotistical, narcissistic man.
Oh, she absolutely is.
I mean, she
fits the
couldn't be
criteria
better.
perfect.
She fits the criteria in every possible way.
Yep.
She doesn't question him. Like she said, she keeps her mouth shut and stays silent. That's abuse. That is abuse.
It's
When
emotional abuse.
It is
for
emotional
sure.
and mental abuse when you are in a relationship where you feel like you have to completely keep your mouth shut in order to keep the peace.
Right.
I think though,
Like-
my mindset with relationships is growth.
It
Right?
is
So if
growth.
you're not
Exactly.
talking, if you're not conversing, if you're not able to challenge or question things, we talked about that earlier. How do you grow? Like
You don't.
You remain stagnant. And again, if that's your MO, if that's what you want, if that's what you're content with, cool. I have no problem if that's what you want.
Right.
But the fact that it's being celebrated, I think that bothers me more than her mindset. It's clear that she, again, probably doesn't have a predominant male figure in her life that could show her right from wrong.
Right.
What bothers me more, though, is the fact that this is being celebrated.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
these men are douches.
Yeah, of
basically.
course.
They all are. Like
They're
these
shallow.
honestly, like the fresh and fits and the whatevers of the world. Well, like I said, it really bothers me. What these guys do is they bring, like we said, women on and they just degrade them, right? Like they demoralize them, they dehumanize them. And I don't know at what point in time men got to disrespect women in such a way and then still in the same breath of air call themselves real men. Like it's wild to me to listen to them.
Right.
And they try to claim that they're alpha males. Well, dude,
Right.
you're completely dehumanizing women
Right.
publicly for something maybe you don't agree with, right?
Right.
Either a life choice that they made, what they want out of a relationship. And you're a man. Like, I don't understand. How are you an alpha
Well, let me flip
you're
the
not.
coin.
by
yeah.
taking it by completely demoralizing a female?
There's no such thing as a narcissistic alpha man. Those two things cannot coexist.
I agree with that one.
Because and they are that you to treat people that way, women or not, treat anyone that way, you have zero empathy. You have zero
Yeah.
moral standing at all. You can't just treat people like shit and think that it's funny. Like
Well, that's the norm, or that it's okay,
or
it
that
should
that's
be
normal.
socially
Like let's treat
acceptable.
everyone like that's narcissistic to the nth degree. That's psychopathic behavior, and you can't. A narcissistic person cannot be an alpha male because an alpha male knows his flaws. An alpha male is growing, constantly evolving as a human being, as a person. They are working on their shit. They're looking at themselves in the mirror. They have shadows that they know that they need to overcome. Like an alpha man, like respects the feminine side of things as well. Like, so you can't, those two don't coexist. So any man on there that's acting like that, they are sadly mistaken on who they think they are.
Oh, they absolutely are. I mean, first off, listen, you as an alpha, right? Like you should have it ingrained in you to protect
Yes,
the
exactly.
women in your life.
You protect, you provide, you
Right.
respect.
And that should be like unquestionably like ingrained in your every being.
Yeah.
If you want to call yourself an alpha.
Right.
If you are not protective of the women in your life, if you can disrespect them to that level,
Treat them like shit for
treat
no
them
reason.
like shit, make them feel like your tolerance for them is love.
Well,
it's
that's
outrageous.
insecurity.
It's
the moment
insecure.
you need to put someone down, you are showing your insecurities. They are screaming.
Well, it's
right?
you overcoming your shortcomings by making someone feel less than,
Right. You don't need to make people feel less than when you feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
Absolutely
isn't that
not.
just a bully?
It is a bully. It's
They are bullies.
yeah. Confident people. I think David Goggins said this too. He's like, confident people don't go around hurting other people.
They don't speak down to other people. They don't look down at other people.
Period. They don't. And so these men, that's all they're doing. They're not confident. They're insecure little boys that want women to shut up because they can't handle their own emotional incapacity to actually have a relationship. Like they can't be, confronted. They can't be in a relationship where they're being called out on their shit because that hurts too much.
Right.
That hurts too much. That means I have to accept that I have flaws and that I have areas of weakness. Well, I can't do that.
So you think this is just complete overcompensating and taking it to such an extreme level?
100%.
They're women haters.
Yes, they clearly hate women.
They're women haters. Guarantee you, every one of these guys had some bad interaction
Mommy
with a
issue.
female
was gonna
at
say,
some point in their life.
It's really sad. It's
It
sad.
is.
Mommy, right? The same
and
thing
they
we talked
go-
about the girl for their dad.
Right. And
They either didn't have a relationship with their mother, or maybe the mother was not somebody who should have raised them,
Or they
not
had a
fit.
narcissistic father that treated their mother like shit, and their mother
reflected off
tolerated
that.
it, and so they had no respect for their mother.
Oh, the mother being codependent, and so they just
Yeah.
thought it was the norm.
Yeah.
Listen,
They
if you have no respect for your mother, it's going to be very, very hard for you to respect another woman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it just
It's impossible.
No, it is.
Yeah, because that should be the person you respect the most in the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no way that
crazy.
you can have that level of or that low of respect for your mother,
Right.
and then show an unbelievable amount of respect for another
That is one of
woman.
the first
It's
things I
impossible.
look at. If I'm going to date someone, the first thing I want to know is, how do you treat your mom?
Absolutely.
How do you view your mom? Do you respect her? Are you kind to her? Do you answer her phone calls? Because the way that they treat their mother is exactly how they're going to treat you.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Or even worse.
Yeah.
It's not going to be better.
No, that's
It won't, yeah, it won't be better.
Yeah, it won't be. I don't know how
It
bad
might
it'll
be
be.
at first. It might be
Yeah.
at first when they're pretending.
First
but
3 months.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Well, that's
the-
the thing. It's an act, right? Like the
Yeah.
crazy thing is they're so good at putting up this act. Oh God. I mean, it's amazing to me.
It is amazing.
It's like they sit home at night and they practice it. And I mean, and I
You're
was,
not wrong.
No, it's true. And I'm so baffled by it because it's like, what's wrong with you? Like mentally, what is wrong with you that you would be so calculated to take advantage of someone to that degree? Where
I don't get it.
like you're going to devote that amount of time into building someone up and then just
Only to tear them down.
only to like why?
Because
Like,
they're insecure.
yeah, but
Because I thought this was so funny. Do you know who Ace Metaphor is?
no, I do not.
He's one of my favorite people to listen to as a podcast, but he said, never in the history of ever has a fuckboy with no value thought, she's too good for me. I'm not going to go for it. No, she's out of my league. I'm just not going to go for it. He's like, they're still going to go for it.
Right.
They're still
Absolutely
going to
not.
go for that girl. But then what happens is they go for the girl that they know is clearly out of their league, and they are constantly insecure because they're,
Shot down.
well, no, because they know they can't measure up. They know this
Right.
woman deserves better. And I mean, there's a difference. I should say this. That's usually what happens. Sometimes a man is confident, even knowing that the woman is out of his league, and he can go, "Look, I don't know how I got this woman. It's beyond me. I'll never figure it out, but I am so glad I did."
And they're grateful.
And I want everyone to know, like, look what I got. It's like a little prize. Like there are those kind of men, but that's because they are confident within themselves and
Right.
they are healing
agree.
the things that they need to heal. But then there are men that are like, because I know she's out of my league, I have to manipulate her. I have to gaslight her. I have to do little jabs and little digs here and there so I can bring her down to my level so she doesn't know she's better than me.
Yeah.
It's okay for her to be better than me, but I don't want her to know she
Right.
is.
You
And
put it
actually, how
like-
long do those relationships last?
Not very long.
No, they really
well,
don't.
actually, I shouldn't say that. It depends on the girl.
Right.
It depends on the
It
How
depends on what
manipulate-
she can tolerate. It depends
Right.
on her self-worth.
Yep.
Because I can say, like, I was in an abusive relationship for 3 years, but I had no self-worth at all. I had none. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know that I should be treated better. I was in such a state of desperately trying to be loved by this person that no matter what they did, I tolerated it.
Can I ask you what helped you get out of it? Like what brought it to the surface where you were like, this
Today's
is
the
it.
day.
That's enough. You don't have.
I will. If you really want me to go in there, I will.
I would love for you to.
Okay, so I've never spoken about this publicly before, but I will today. And I think it's important to talk about it honestly. It got to a point where I was already physically, mentally, and emotionally sick because your body, when you are in a constant state of stress, period, your body just starts to like fall apart.
It's
right?
fight or flight.
You get
consistently.
sick.
Yeah. It just
And I
shuts
was
down.
already sick in all those ways because it was abusive, you know. This man cheated on me so many times. I walked in on it at one point.
I'm so sorry about
Found
that.
the girl. She was hiding. She was hiding naked. I found her, and he was lying and saying there was no one there. Anyway, he became very, very physically abusive too, and it got to a point where I knew if I didn't leave, I wouldn't make it out of it. Like the last straw was he drugged me behind an alleyway. It was like a fair that was going on, and he drugged me behind an alleyway, and he was strangling me and telling me he was going to kill me. And by the grace of God, this group of guys happened to see him dragging me down the sidewalk behind this alley. Thank God they saw this, and they came running and grabbed him off of me, and they were beating him up. They jumped him, and I was able to take off running and get away. And he ended up getting away from them somehow. But by the time he caught back up to me, I was running to a friend's house that lived close by. A cop came because they had called the cops when they saw him take off running. So anyway, my point is that it was at that point that I realized if I stay here, if I stay in this relationship, as extreme as it sounds, I knew I'd probably die, because if he didn't kill me, I'd probably want to kill myself. I was so mentally and emotionally not in a good place. I had no self-worth left at all.
Well, it tears you down.
It was awful. And my mom actually, she lived in a different city, a different state. She actually came and got me and was like, you can't stay here. You got to get away. And so I left. I moved from the whole state to get away from him. And it took me months to recover from that. I sat in a room by myself for months, didn't want to see anyone, talk to anyone. I was suicidal for a long time. And it took me months to recover from that. And that was one of the traumas. That's why I started going to therapy, honestly. This last year was because I was realizing all these things that I hadn't processed, in my past,
Right.
even as a young woman, they were still there. They were still nagging at me and affecting my relationships. So that was the final straw, was knowing that I had no other choice. And a lot of women are in that situation, unfortunately, but they don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
They don't have anyone to come pull them out of it. Because if my mom hadn't come, I probably would have stayed. It probably would have ended up being one of the worst scenarios possible. Yeah. Because emotionally, you are so tied to that person. It doesn't make any sense. It's it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain.
No, it's you can't get away. You're emotionally and physically worn
It's like
down.
a soul tie.
Yeah,
is what they call it. It's like
right.
a soul tie.
And it's soul crushing.
Yeah, it
Right.
is.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry you went through that.
Oh,
That's
it's okay.
It's awful.
I hate to say things like this, but it is the reason why I have so much compassion for women going through bad and abusive relationships, because it's I've been there,
Again, sharing things like that, trying to reach out to women and
Yeah.
show them,
They're just worth so much more.
right, that they're self-worth,
Yeah.
they deserve better than that.
So much more. You don't deserve that.
No.
You never deserved it. And it's the pain of leaving is temporary, but the pain of staying could be life or death sometimes. And you have to choose yourself.
Right. No, you do. Especially when it gets to a place of life or death.
Right.
Or at the very least, even if it's not, and
Right.
you feel that way,
Right.
you need to know to get out.
Yeah.
And you're right. Some people don't have someone to pull them from it.
Right.
And that's why I think it's important that we share and that
Right.
we pass it down so that people know, women know, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's temporary pain, like you said,
Right.
but you'll get through it.
And one thing I want younger women to know is that the moment somebody starts to mentally abuse you is the moment that you leave, because
I agree.
it always turns into more.
Right.
And you don't want to believe it will. You don't think it will. You don't think people are capable of that kind of evil, but they are.
It's almost like they're testing the waters,
100%.
Yeah.
Mental abuse always leads to physical abuse.
They test you out, right? They try to see how much you're willing to take.
Right.
And then they just a natural progression for them
Right.
to get worse and worse.
Right.
And it's ridiculous. I could literally.
And it's because they themselves are not healed. They themselves are not healed from things that they should be getting therapy for. So
Or be in jail.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
they're-
Right, that's the
I'll
other
tell
answer
you,
too.
Right, right.
Men like that, I could choke the life out of them.
Right.
Yes.
I
to
could
see
watch
a
the
man-
white leave their eye and not be upset about it.
Do you,
No, I wouldn't.
you said that people like this guy aren't healed.
Right.
Do you think it's possible that there are some people that are like naturally just like evil, like just like have something in them that is just like maybe there isn't a healing?
Yeah. I do think it's too late for some people, yeah. I still think people like that, there's hope for them. Like in that scenario, my specific scenario, I don't think it was one of those scenarios where it would be too late for him. But like, narcissistic people, like they say that they're just like, they're closed off. Like they're not living in the same world that we are mentally anymore. Like whatever the trauma was that happened to them, it shut something off in them.
They lose their ability to empathize.
Well, it's
And when
compassion.
with people.
Yeah, when you lose empathy,
It's a
you're
problem.
like a freaking animal at that point. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, even animals have fucking empathy.
Just about what you want and what you need.
Yeah, but I do think it's too late for some people.
There are also psychopaths in the world.
Right, right, and that's what I mean. Like,
Right. And
But I hate to say that because I do think I don't think every abuser is incapable of change. I think some people abuse because genuinely they either saw it growing up and that became their normal. I think some of them abuse because they are so deeply wounded and insecure that it's the only thing that makes them feel powerful. I think there are a lot of reasons for it, and I think some of those people could heal and become better, but it's not worth it to stick around and find out.
no, you're taking.
You
That's
can't.
not your hill to die on.
Yeah, it's not. You can't. You are
Yeah.
not a savior. You
Yeah.
are not someone's savior. Like they have to save themselves.
It's a huge dice roll.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one that could put you in serious jeopardy.
Right.
So you need to know. I hate to say it, but you really do. You need to know when to cut ties.
Yeah.
For your own sake.
And the moment that you see something's off with somebody, like that's where women struggle the most. I don't know about men, but women struggle the most not trusting that first instinct, seeing it, knowing it, and feeling it, but going, maybe not. Like I was saying earlier, like they don't trust their instincts. And a lot of that is conditioning. Like,
It is.
like growing up or being in abusive relationships where you're led to believe that the way that you feel and think isn't right, where you have to question yourself because you're not right.
That's where it becomes a problem. You begin, again, so question everything, fine, great.
Right.
You begin questioning yourself, though, it's a slippery slope and it
Right.
can go downhill very quickly.
and that's what an abuser likes.
yeah, because
They
you're
like-
not in control anymore. If
Yeah,
you're not in
don't
control of
trust yourself,
yeah.
trust me.
Yeah, no, I know best.
I know better. Yeah.
But
yeah.
the notion you said, like of being in flight or fight, it'll mess you up
Yeah.
because if you're in that constant, it's kind of like an anxiety attack. Like
Yes.
when you're having an anxiety attack, at least for me, not advising anyone, not a doctor, but for me, you talked about it earlier where like just process it, just sit in it. That's how I am with an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge you're having an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
You've had them before. You'll probably have them again in the future, but just ride it out.
Yeah.
Deep breaths, focus on positive things, but
Yeah.
just don't ignore the fact that
Right.
you're having an anxiety
Let
attack.
it pass.
Exactly. Acknowledge it, let it pass, and let it be.
And don't judge it either.
No, because for me, at least, they're triggered for no reason.
Right.
And they're actually generally triggered when things are going well because I'm constantly in like a place of like
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably
Something good? What?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. This doesn't happen to me.
No, I
But
totally get that.
with fight or flight, it's scary because it's almost like a drug, right? Like your brain is releasing all of this endorphins, oxytocin, like everything that
Cortisol.
that it should normally do. So it's like a drug in a way, whether it's heroin, cocaine, crack, whatever.
Right.
You're altering your brain chemistry because that fight or flight now becomes your new norm. So now when the trauma is over, you talked about it taking months and for many people, I'm sure years.
Yeah.
Because your brain now needs to readjust to your
It is
normal.
literally like leaving an abusive relationship is literally like withdrawal.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you know it's bad for you. You know you can't go back, and yet you want to.
You become
and it doesn't
dependent
make
on it.
sense.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's like tough. It's like it's tough to get away from the habits, like the dependency on it. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you're so comfortable, as crazy as it sounds, in that space,
In the
like,
chaos.
You've been
Right.
there so
Yeah.
long,
Right.
It's all you know,
Right.
And you get conditioned.
addicted to it.
You get addicted to it. You do.
Because the highs feel so good
Yeah,
with
and
that person.
And the lows are even worse, though.
right.
That's-
The lows are worse, but the highs are so good that like
And at that point, too, you're just looking
constantly
for
seeking
constant
it.
validation,
Yeah.
anything to get
Yeah.
a positive reaction from that person.
Anything.
When it could be as simple as, your partner just saying, good morning.
Yeah.
Like that could make your day.
Yeah.
Like if that, but I've said it a million times, hard to see the forest when you're standing in the trees. And sometimes
Yeah.
it takes, unfortunately, being abused behind an alley. And it's thank God somebody saw it.
Yeah.
Or a family intervention or a friend intervention
Yeah.
where it's to a point, it's like, dude, like this isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to cut off a pinky toe.
Right.
You're going to die if
Yeah.
you don't get out.
Yeah. In one way or the other, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, like a part of you dies.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. You lose
Or
yourself.
all
to
of those parts
You
of you
need
die.
to grieve that too. It's part of
Yeah.
your healing process.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, like, but the reason why the highs are so high in relationships like that is because it's like almost like you start to see a glimpse of hope.
Yes.
Or you think you do.
You get so used to the lows that a high is like, what?
Right. Like,
Because
Okay, we could turn the corner.
right. Well,
Right.
because they start you off on a nothing but a high.
right.
Right.
Like everything is a high in the beginning,
Absolutely.
and you're like, oh my god, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. This person is amazing. They make me feel so good about myself. Like I am so in love with this person. Like they are so good to me. And then it's a slow poison. It's like poisoning someone slowly.
Right.
Like you don't even see it happening until next thing you know, you're like, why am I miserable all the time?
Yeah.
Why am I depressed?
Anxious.
Why am I constantly anxious?
Well.
Like this isn't me. And you're getting headaches and you're getting stomach aches and all these things are happening with your body and you're going, what is going on? And you know things aren't like great, but it happens so gradually that it like snuck up on you, So then any attention they give you is like, oh,
Immediate
okay.
It's
high.
like,
Oh, that feels
like
so much
that hit.
better.
Right.
Oh, that feels so much better.
It's
Yeah.
like a glimpse into the past, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is what they used to
Yeah.
be like.
Yeah.
So, oh man, like maybe we're going to turn the corner today,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
Like
okay. He does love me.
Right. Right.
It isn't me. I am lovable.
Absolutely.
Like,
and
yeah.
the sick part about it is they do it intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a
Right?
fuck
Because
place to be.
they know, like they need to throw that in to keep you holding on.
They need you to feel like it's all you.
They do.
With little things like you're too emotional. I can't even talk to you. You're just so emotional. You're
Right.
just so sensitive. You need so much from me. And it's like, so then you start questioning yourself. You're
Right.
going, why am I so emotional? Like if I could just stop being so emotional, this person would give me more attention and affection. Like this person would want to be around me more if I was less sensitive. Like you start thinking that they're right.
Right.
I'm the problem.
And then you ask
Yeah.
somebody else, you're like, am I this? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? You're the least emotional, you're the least, sensitive person I've ever met. And
Right.
you're like, well,
But you don't want that person's affirmation. You
Right.
want your partner's affirmation.
right. You're like,
So-
okay, you're right, but he thinks that, so
This
I
is
need
who's
to-
it
important.
has to be true.
Right. But yeah, eventually you start to realize that it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
Like it's just never going to be
But
enough.
then one day, God willing, something triggers inside of you. And luckily for me, I've been in an abusive relationship, so I know things that maybe another woman wouldn't, that hadn't been in one before.
You mean from experience?
From experience. Like now, like I can honestly say, like I might like linger a minute longer than I should when I see the red flags, but there is a point where I go, okay, this isn't good for me. This person isn't good for me. And whether they're abusive and whether they would be or not, it doesn't even matter. I feel like shit.
But you also, too, get to that point where now you're hyper aware of it, right? Like there's no
Hyper-aware.
way you can't not notice those
Right.
things anymore. And now you have the mindset to be able to go into it and look and say, like, if I continue to do this,
Yeah.
it's self-sabotaging.
No, exactly. And if I continue to do this, I know how it ends up.
Yeah.
And it's
we
not
know
good.
where this goes.
It's not good. It doesn't end well.
Yeah.
Like,
And at this point, you know, right?
You do.
You do. I mean, at least you hope you do,
y-
right?
yeah, I do.
But it's
I
tough.
do.
But again, it's one of the, like for you, because you're such a good person, you have a big heart. One of the hardest things to do is always, and probably
Yeah.
always going to be, is to not give people the benefit
Right,
of the
and
doubt.
that's the thing. Like, it doesn't mean you're going to want to walk away.
No, not
You
at
don't want
all.
to. You still want to believe that someone's good.
Yeah.
You
And-
still want to believe there's good in them, that they didn't mean to hurt you the way that they did, that you were partially to blame or that you are solely responsible in some ways. But like at the end of the day, none of that really even matters. Because if you are miserable in a relationship and you're not married, let's throw that out there, and you're not married to this person, and even then still, but especially if you're not married to this person and if you're miserable and you feel like you don't feel good about yourself anymore, this is a huge sign that it's time for you to go. Like you
100%.
have to choose yourself. You have to, you know?
You need to pay attention to how someone makes you feel.
Yeah.
And if you are constantly in a state where you're just in a bad space around them, you need to get away.
Right.
Because it's never going to change.
Right. No, it isn't.
It's
It
not.
doesn't.
That anxiety.
It gets worse.
Yeah, that angst, that anxiety, it's always going to be there.
Right.
And as soon as you notice that the minute you're away from them, you just feel a relief.
That's the huge sign, right?
Like it's a sigh. You're like, oh, I don't have to deal with it right now.
Yeah.
Like you should run.
I will
minute
say
you
this:
feel
there are different types. Like there are avoidant people that they get out of a relationship that was actually good for them, and they feel a sigh of relief because, you know, they're suddenly like they're not required to face themselves, like I was saying before.
Right.
But then there's, you know, the people that are deliberately like doing things to like hurt you and make you feel bad about yourself. And so when you get out of those relationships and you're like, my life feels really peaceful right now.
Yeah.
And at first it hurts because rejection hurts, but. Yeah, that's it.
But
that's
are
a
you
sign.
really rejected? You know
Huh?
what I mean? Is it really rejection though?
It feels that way. It looks that
Yeah,
way. You know, but it's not necessarily.
Right.
But the trouble and where it becomes or where it can become problematic is when you have individuals like this woman who might not have the self-worth that you have, might
Right.
not have the support that you have, where you had essentially, it sounds like a group of guys probably saved your life.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it sounds like, you know, you had a good relationship with your father at the very least, and like you knew your worth and you knew what was happening.
I didn't
wasn't-
feel it.
Right.
But
you, at least
deep down
you
I knew.
Sounds like someone like this, if they don't have self-worth, then they have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah.
Like there's,
You can't be what you've never seen.
right, you can't miss what you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's terrifying to think somebody like this in a relationship like that, chances are she will never get out because
Right.
she doesn't know, she has nothing else to fall back
She'll
on.
always believe him over herself.
Yes.
And over anybody else.
And
that's
over
also-
anyone else
Yes.
because she's so brainwashed. Yeah.
Right. And I say that too. Like when people that you love and are close to you and who have been in your life forever, like you also you need to always like
Your friends
they're-
are always right.
Yeah, like they're there for a reason.
Your friends
you know?
and family are always right
Yeah.
about a person every single
time.
and you hate it. You're like, no. You ignore it, but they're always right.
Well, because you want to see the best in them, and they see them for who they are, right?
see
Because
them for
they're
who they
not
are.
in the relationship; they're not
Yeah.
too close to it.
I know things that they
And-
don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
but the
They're
wild
not,
thing
they're
is,
not emotionally invested in this person, so they're seeing who they really are.
absolutely. And
You know?
the wild part about it is if we just took a step back every now and then and said, well, these people have been in my life for 30 something years.
Yeah. They want what's best for
They
me.
want what, right? And if they're telling me, right, as the people that they are, that this person is toxic for me, they're probably right.
Right.
Should
They're-
pay a little attention to this.
Yeah, it's but we do. We don't listen. I can't tell you how many times I've asked friends for advice and then completely ignored it. I mean, that's
It's your
what I
favorite.
do.
It's like a favorite thing to do.
It is. It's like
I want your advice. I'm not going to take it.
Right.
I just want to hear it.
I just want to hear it.
I
Right.
want to know that you
Just
have
want
some.
the confirmation
But
that
Yeah.
what I'm doing is right.
Well,
Right.
that's what it is. You're not really asking for advice, right? You're
Right.
hoping that someone agrees with what you're doing,
And
Right.
if they don't,
right?
And then they don't, and you're like,
Then you're like, fuck,
And then
fuck
it's like,
you.
all right,
Screw
that's
it.
one more thing to ignore.
you're
you
wrong.
don't, you don't
but-
know.
Yeah, it's all right.
You're not in it. You don't know.
Anyway, let me pull the next person. Eventually, I'll find someone who agrees with me.
Right.
You know?
Cherry picking a little bit?
Yeah, you start cherry picking the friends that you call.
I didn't like that answer.
That's sounding a little too accurate. I'm going to call someone else.
I call my third cousin who's never met this person.
He seems great in his pictures.
So
He looks like a really nice guy in that photo.
That's what I needed today.
You're right. He is.
So, we've been talking a lot about, obviously, the more negative side of relationships, toxic relationships. So, I mean, you give a lot of advice on, what should be done to maintain a healthy one.
Right.
So, I mean, like, what, like, for you, what have you found works, like, the best for you? Like, what do you think is, like, paramount as far as what needs to be done to stay in a healthy relationship?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you need to know that it's healthy.
Right.
Like it has to be healthy. But honestly, I think it depends on both people. Like, if you aren't someone who can take accountability, you'll never have a healthy relationship. Period. Because a relationship, I've thought about this a lot. It is going to challenge you no matter what. No matter what, every relationship is going to challenge you. It's going to trigger you because that's just life when you are sharing your life with another person who's different than you. who has different triggers than you, who has different opinions than you are literally going to you're going to butt heads at times. So,
Right.
or at times. So I think in order for it to be healthy, both people have to be willing to go, you know what? I'm willing to work on this. I'm willing to face the hard stuff with you. And I think that starts with choosing that person. You can't just be wishy-washy. You can't, if you want a relationship, you can't go into it like, oh, let's just see what happens. You have to be
Right.
like, you know what?
Intent.
Yeah, you have to have intention. Like without intention, no one can have like any feeling of safety. There's always that question of what is this? Or is this person going to stay if we have a bad fight? Are we going to break up? Like intentionality is like so important. But I think for healthy relationships, it has to be two people that are willing to look at themselves, two people that are willing to be accountable for their shortcomings, two people that are willing to grow individually and together. Because I mean, an ego can't be a part of that. Like I think ego is like the number one killer for so many relationships because people get so insecure about their shortcomings they can't even look at themselves.
Yeah, you can't have an ego in a relationship.
Like it has
can't.
to go out the window.
It does completely.
Like, and if you love someone enough, like you have to be willing to say, even though it hurts to hear something like that about myself, I can actually sit with that and evaluate whether that's true or not, whether that's an area that I need to work on. And
Right.
I can say that I'm sorry. Like there are so many people that can't say sorry.
I know it's the hardest thing in the world for some people.
Like, I mean, and I don't understand it. Like I'm an over apologizer. Like I
Right.
will say sorry even when you're wrong because I want to make things work.
Is that like an empath? Like one of the biggest
Yes.
characteristics
Yeah,
is
it
over
is.
apologizing?
Yeah, we get in a disagreement and I'm saying sorry even though you were the one that was petty and rude.
Right. Like, sorry I'm hurting your feelings. But,
Right.
you know.
You have to be able to, grow. You have to be able to grow and face your stuff and be willing to change in some ways, and compromise. And I think that's pretty obvious,
Yeah, I agree with you. It's tough. You have to grow together, right? And you do. You need to make sure that ego never comes into play. Like
Yeah.
you need to be able to recognize things about yourself if they're affecting your partner negatively.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, for me, a big part of it is like, communicating with one
Yes.
another. Like if you can't communicate with each other,
Yeah.
then you have a problem.
That's, yeah.
I need to be able to open up to you.
Right. And that is like one of my standards now is like, if we can't actually confront the hard stuff, this will never work. Because no one's perfect. We're going to butt heads sometimes. Like we're going to have issues. But if you stonewall, if you go silent for hours at a time, if you can't respond to something because you don't want to talk about it, like how do you make something work?
Well, how do you get over it?
You can't move on.
No, you can't.
Like you can't keep pushing things under a rug. That's why divorce happens because people push things under the rug for 10, 20 years until one day they just freaking explode or they're
Or
just
have a heart
done.
attack.
Yeah.
They're just numb because
The worst thing, like what I hate the most is when people are like, "Oh, we'll just talk about it tomorrow." Like, no, I don't want to save it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to carry this into the next day.
See, I'm a little different
Like,
though.
we gotta,
it depends on the person.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like some people need a minute to process. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, communication.
Right.
I am struggling with this right now. I'm angry. I don't know how to like talk about this and keep my cool.
Right.
Can I have the night? I'm going to take the night.
I
Let's
agree.
talk about it in the morning. We'll address it. We'll get it done with. But that's still different than just
Not addressing
pushing it off.
cutting it off.
Yeah.
Right.
Like just stop responding or I'm not talking about this or we're not talking about this or that's completely different.
It
You
is.
know?
Absolutely. No, 100%. Yeah, if you can communicate that to somebody, then yeah, you should give someone the respect.
Right.
Of letting them, process
Right. People
whatever
People
it
process
is.
differently, and that's
Yeah.
totally
They do.
fine too. I'm that type of person where it's like I need a night. Like
Yeah.
I need to think about this because we talked about it earlier this episode where an argument or a disagreement, a discussion is trying to comprehend that other person's
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah.
And if I'm upset, if we've been yelling at each other, if we're stressed, I'm going to have a really hard time doing that objectively.
Yeah.
Where I can just take a step back and try and comprehend the way you feel or the way you see things. And
Yeah.
it's not saying it's not right, it's not wrong, it's not warranted. If you're telling me this is how you feel, I
Right.
want you to be seen, I want you to be heard. But right now, I don't understand how you feel. And I
Right.
just need some time to try and wrap my brain
Yeah.
around why you feel the way you feel.
Right.
We can talk about it tomorrow. But I agree, like
Right.
not in 7 months.
Right.
Like tomorrow. Like
you need a minute to take your emotion out of it,
Yes.
to remove the emotion so you can go, okay, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
this is...
because I'm biased, right? Like
Right.
how could I not be? These are my emotions.
Right.
But it doesn't make your emotions any less warranted or any
Right.
less valid. I just can't see them with my mindset right now.
Right.
So I need to calm down. I need to take a break because if we don't, I'm not going to see your point of view and we're not going to
Right.
be able to grow from this.
Right. And I think reassurance is really important too. Like, as far as that's concerned, being able to say, like, look, I still care about you. We're good. I just need a minute. Like, because a lot of women have been in toxic relationships where the second a person says, I don't want to talk about this right now, they're immediately like, oh, great. Like, it's over.
Kinda
They're
triggered.
leaving. They're done with
Right,
me.
yeah.
They're never coming back. They're going to go silent on me. They're going to ghost me. And, I think just being able to say, like, I care about you. We're good. I just need the night. Think about this. We'll talk about it in the morning. Have a good night.
Right.
I
I just need the time.
Yeah.
Just- and I promise that we will talk about
Right.
this. So yeah.
Right. But that requires maturity.
It does. It requires maturity to
Yeah.
give somebody reassurance like
Yeah.
that, 100%. But I think also one of the worst things you could do, and I think people need to be careful with this, is just you can't, when someone tells you how they feel and you twist it or you take them out of context to spin it in some way, like that's when people start to shut down.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
that's
like, listen,
manipulation
it's like-
too.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, it's manipulation, but to a degree, it's also, sometimes people just don't see it your way and then they try to tell you how you feel.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people, like, you got to be careful because, especially as a man, like men have a problem opening up to begin with. They're not typically as emotional as women are. That's
Right.
not a negative. It's
Right.
just typically how men are. So when you're in a relationship and you're trying to talk to your wife or your partner, whatever it is, and she twists or takes out of context what you're trying to say to fit whatever narrative they have, it's a problem.
Right.
Right. And then next time you ask me to be open to you, or you say, oh, well, you're never open, like you never talk to me. Well, it's like, because every time I talk to you, you twist something I'm saying, right? Or you pull from it the only thing you heard in it, right? Like you leave everything else out that I said and you pull like the one negative out of it and then you just harp on it.
My thing with that, like, and and sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't because, we're not perfect, but asking questions goes so far. Like,
does.
okay, you said this. Is this what you meant
Explain
by
it to
that?
me. Yeah.
Because if you like, I'm gonna assume things like any other human being.
Right.
Like based on my emotions. Like if something makes me feel a certain way, I'm gonna assume a certain thing, unless you can tell me differently. So I think asking questions is so important and arguing, and like trying to get a point across,
Yeah, I think questions is huge.
which you learn in therapy.
Right. There's nothing wrong with healthy arguments. I mean,
Yeah.
it's how listen, if you don't argue with someone from time to time, like you probably don't care.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like you have
exactly.
to care enough to get into an argument with
Yeah,
someone. Because if I
yeah.
don't care about you, I'm not wasting my breath fighting
Right,
with you. I'm just
right.
going to kind of brush you off.
Right.
I only fight with people, argue with people that I genuinely care about.
Right.
Right? Because
Where you want a resolution.
You're going to get my attention.
Right. Because it means something to me
Yeah.
to have, understanding from you, or
Right.
for me to understand, for me to understand you and you to understand me.
Right.
And it's worth me putting time into arguing with you if I have to.
Right.
To get my point across or try to get yours out so
Right.
that I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think people tend to overlook that. And they think, oh, well, we never fight, we never argue. Well, it's probably something wrong.
Yeah.
When people
that's
say
kind
that,
of I'm like, it's good. I mean, I guess you guys are on the same page on a lot of things, and maybe you can resolve it before it gets to the point of an argument. It's not to say, just because someone says, I've never been in an argument, it's not to say we don't disagree.
Right.
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 But like, what's an argument, right? Because even that's subjective. Like, is an argument like a blowout fight
Yeah,
where you sleep
yeah.
on the couch for a week, or is
Right.
an argument like, hey, I don't really want Thai for dinner. Go fuck yourself. Like what is an argument? Like it's.
I guess I've never raised my voice. Like I do not raise my voice with men or in relationships. Like I don't do it because it doesn't lead to anything good.
it doesn't.
I mean, the moment a woman raises her voice, the man feels disrespected, right? Like, and vice versa. Like, I just think out of respect, like if you actually care about what this person has to say and how they feel too, the way that you talk is such a huge, a huge thing.
It
like,
is.
Tone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tone for sure.
It was,
Yeah, tone, which I'm not always great at, especially when it comes to texting. When you're having like a texting argument with
it's
someone,
hard.
Well, you
though.
can't
and
tell.
you're saying it like, that hurt my feelings, and
Right.
that made me feel like you were demeaning, and then they're reading it like, that hurt my feelings, and I felt so demeaned by you.
Right.
And who knows?
Well, because you can't, you lose context in
Right,
text
you don't
messages.
know,
That's the
and that
problem.
just causes so much
Yeah,
miscommunication.
it does. You never know what mood someone's in, right? Like
So true.
They could have gone something. They could have had a real bad day and just not be reading what you're saying the way you mean it.
Yeah,
Like-
no, 100%.
So yeah, definitely, I'm a big fan of phone
That's how you
calls.
say things. I think is just so vital to
It is
communication and
gonna be my new
effective.
policy.
Just
Well,
call.
Yeah, just call.
Just call.
Just pick it up. I don't care how hard it is to say, just call.
People hearing sincerity in your voice also goes
It's a
a long
nice
way.
feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
goes
hear
a
that
long
somebody
way.
cares and somebody's reaching out versus you just like, oh, hey, hope you're having a good day. Versus you calling somebody to say, hey, look, I know you had a rough few days, but I'm thinking about you. Just today's you.
I will say there are sometimes like when I would have wanted to call, but I know that person's not going to answer the call. That they'll
Right.
only respond through texting,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, okay, do I say nothing and just sit here in my anxiety,
Kind of like better than
or do I
nothing.
just text them?
You know what I've learned? Like sometimes it's good. Like sometimes you just got to get it out. Like
Yeah.
I said, right? So
Yeah.
even though you may know they're never going to respond, sometimes it's harder on you
Yeah.
to keep it in. So sometimes you just getting it out and sending it to them.
Yeah,
Even if they don't respond, at least you said what you had to say.
yeah,
You know they read it one way or the other.
right,
So
right.
There's no avoiding it.
It's hard, and there's like a fine line because it's like I used to be the type of person that would hold everything in. I didn't want to disrupt anything. I would just suffer in silence, like I'd just brush it under the rug to prevent, any issues from happening. And then I went to like the opposite extreme where I was like, no, like my opinion matters, my perspective matters, to where I would address everything.
Right.
And then it's too much. So it's like I have to learn that fine balance between like speaking up when it's necessary, but letting things go when it's not. You know?
Absolutely.
pure
It's-
empath.
It's picking your
Yeah.
battles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to pick your battles.
Yeah, for sure.
You try to fight them all, you're going to constantly be in that state.
That's just exhausting too. Just
is.
mentally, it'll just bring you to a point where you're like, I don't have the energy, and you start withdrawing, you start pulling back,
Yeah.
and things suffer from it. Work can suffer, relationships, family.
It wears you down.
Yeah, man, it's exhausting. Being mentally drained, being mentally exhausted,
Yeah.
is for me almost worse than physical exhaustion. Physical exhaustion, I get a couple good nights of sleep. I can go
Right.
to the gym. I can get stress out. I can adjust that. When you're having that mental exhaustion
It's
and you
just-
feel like you don't have control of it, it's terrifying.
awful.
It will shut your body down physically. Like the way stress, as I'm getting older, seeing how stress can physically manifest itself, it's terrifying.
It is
You
terrifying.
gotta control that.
It incapacitates you.
Yeah, dude, it'll shut
Horrible
you down.
feeling.
It's rough. And you don't want to feel that way in a relationship.
I want to
No.
feel that way in life.
Yeah, in life, but you want to come home and, your relationship should bring you up.
I agree.
Right? Like you should never go home and your relationship's dragging you down
Right.
even further. Like you come home from a bad day, you want to go to the person that's going to bring you back up.
Yeah.
And that's really what it should be like.
I think a lot of women too, like, again, reassurance goes so far.
It does.
Like,
Communication.
if I
effective
say, hey,
communication.
this is bothering me, and that person just says, I'm sorry, that was not my intention at all. I hear you. Like, what can I do to like make it better? I'm
made your
immediately
day.
fine.
Yeah.
Like I'm
cool.
over it that second.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even matter anymore.
It's
Right.
just the acknowledgement.
It's acknowledgement and reassurance.
Yep.
Like, but if they're like, well, I mean, if their immediate response is defensive and, well, you don't have the right, like, then I'm pissed.
Yeah, then I'm annoyed.
Now it's a thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be mad about it for the rest of the night.
Right.
But like,
No,
you know.
you're right. Acknowledgement, it does. It goes a long, long way. 'Cause
Yeah.
at least it's addressed, right?
Yes.
It's been noticed. It's been addressed.
Yeah.
So you're heard.
Yeah.
And then, you can. Actually, it's funny. You can just kind of even set it aside, go enjoy the
Right.
rest of your night. And like you'll come back to it or you'll talk about it and they heard you.
Yeah.
And that
goes
was
so
plenty. It really does. It's wild.
it's so much easier,
and if people just understood, like people need to understand that more and just really practice that more.
Right.
And things will be so much better for them.
Right.
So much. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, just everything we talked about. I mean, it's unfortunately just hard to find someone good today that just aligns with you.
Yeah.
It's rough. The dating world is rough today.
Right.
It's changed so much,
It has changed a lot.
you know.
But I still think there's like hope out there.
There
Like, I
is.
really do. Like I'm never going to give up on my Disney princess dreams of
And you
finding my Prince Charming. I'm just not going to give up on it.
You
Good.
shouldn't give up on it.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I do think despite, the people that have hurt me and, used me and abused me and all of that, like I still believe there's a lot of good men out there. I really do. Like I think most of the time, like men feel the same way that women do. Like, and I think that we just somehow miss each other. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know how we're missing each other, but we are. Like, but they're out there.
I think there's someone out there for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it takes longer for others, but I think inevitably, as long as you're open to it and you're
Yeah.
looking for it, I think eventually
Or not
you'll
looking for
find
it.
or not. Yeah, it could be not looking for it, but you got to be open to receiving it.
Yeah.
And I think if you are, then it'll happen for you.
Yeah. I
You know?
agree.
That's all. Once you close yourself off, then it's tough.
Yeah. I agree.
But
And that's hard. Like that's hard for people to open their heart back up again. Like when you've been wronged so many times. And again, that's where like therapy and healing comes into play, because when you get to a place of peace within yourself, it's so much easier to go, okay, you know what? Like no matter what happens, I can make it through it.
right.
Like no matter what happens, I can make it through another heartbreak because I've got myself, like
Yeah.
I'm good on my own.
Well, you learn, right? You learn how to deal,
Yeah.
and then you get more comfortable
Yeah.
inevitably.
Yeah.
It's great though. If when you can get to that place, it's great.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's always like you're always going to work at it, right? You're never going to be perfect all the time.
No.
You're just not.
There's no such thing.
No, there's not. But yeah, that's it. Anything you want to talk about?
Don't give up on yourself. Like keep fighting for yourself. Keep fighting for your own healing. Keep doing the hard work even when it feels like every time you take a step forward, you're falling 10 steps back. Like keep pushing through the hard places in your life and looking deeply within. One thing I've learned is that if you can have one good day in your healing process, you're making progress, because you can't fake a good day.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't fake it. No matter how it looks on the outside, like just believing in yourself, talking kindly to yourself, doing kind things for yourself, treating yourself mentally and physically like you're someone you love and care about and want to see good things for is so important. Like, I don't think people even realize how important it is to only allow like positive thoughts about yourself to enter your mind, like to immediately, the second that doubt comes in or negative thoughts come in, to just replace them. Like that sometimes saves me, and doing things that are good for me, even when I don't want to. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think it's tough for people sometimes, but they need to take a page out of your book, Ashley, and they'll be all right.
Well, it's always tough. You just do it.
You
do
have
it
to.
until you believe it.
You got to force yourself. They
Act
say
like you've been
it
there.
becomes learned behavior.
It's like affirmations. Like you don't believe them when you first start them. That's the whole point.
Right. Absolutely.
You say it until you believe it.
Yep.
You
do.
Fake it till you make it.
I should say fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to teach yourself the behavior. So
Yeah.
even when you don't want to do something, even when you go to the gym, you don't want to go to the gym, you're having a bad day, force yourself to get up and
Right.
go.
You always feel better.
Right, exactly. You're always going to feel better once you get there and do it.
Yeah.
And the more you do that for yourself, the more you'll get into that routine, and you'll always continue to do things, even when you're having an off day and you don't want to do it.
Yeah, and you're worth it too. Like you're
You
worth investing in.
Yeah.
You are worth investing in more than anyone else in your life. And the more you invest in yourself, the easier it is to invest in other people.
Yeah, I agree.
So
You're a smart lady.
I've learned through experience the hard way.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we all have.
Everything I know is from how I screwed it up.
I know.
I don't know what to do, but I know what to not do.
Yeah.
I know what not to do.
Yeah, I don't recommend our paths, but
don't.
There are easier ways.
Please don't do it this
yeah,
way.
there
but
are definitely simpler ways, I assure you. Everybody, thank you again for tuning in. Continue to watch. Give us your feedback. We love your feedback. Anything you want us to talk about, let us know. Let us know how you felt about the episode tonight. Let us know how you felt about Ashley. She was amazing. Definitely check her out. She's on IG as Ashley Maland. You can find her on IG, YouTube, and Facebook. So check out some of her writing. Check out her videos. They're awesome. She's super motivational. And ladies, she's got tons of great advice for you. So be sure to check it out. Let us know what you thought about the episode. And thank you all for watching. As always, we appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.